basically we have a goal by 2024, and we're really going very quickly towards that goal, which I'm very pleased with,
Mhm.
because right as of now, we have cleaned 250,000 pounds of plastics from the oceans.
Wow.
At the minimum, taking 1 gram upwards, hopefully to 2 grams a day, because it helps protect everything in the body. Basically, when you look at the research, there's 40,000 different studies on omega-3s. So it's one of the most researched nutrients out there.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 30 of the Healthy Habit Podcast. Today, we're talking with Laurel Sterling, representing Carlson Labs. Laurel Sterling is a registered dietitian-nutritionist, certified nutritionist, and national educator for Carlson Labs, and she's worked in the natural products industry since 2000, 23 years, big difference there. Over the years, Laurel's counseled hundreds of individuals, lectured at various corporations and events, written numerous articles and blogs, and she can be heard on radio shows and podcasts like this one. Laurel has a genuine passion for educating, informing, and empowering the public through nutrition education, and today we're going to discuss all things Carlson Labs and go deep here. Welcome back, Laurel, to episode
Thank you.
30. You were on 15 episodes exactly, on episode 15, so welcome back. How are we doing?
Oh, great. Wonderful.
So give us a little intro on what you wanted to discuss today with our listeners, and then we'll dive deep into each one. I know it's you mentioned it's Mother Earth Month. Is that correct? In our
Yes.
back behind the scenes conversations before today?
Yes, it is Earth Day. Well, from today when we're taping here, it's a couple days away. So we've been talking about it a lot at Carlson and promoting it as well. And last time I was on, I gave a little bit of background about the history of Carlson, and this time I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about what we're doing with our initiatives inside and outside the bottle sustainably. And we also are going to talk about some DPA too, which is a newer listing on our labels and some new products that we have.
Absolutely. Let's get things started then with sustainability. People always want to make sure the company they're supporting is sustainable. They're doing the right practices there to make the product as sustainable both inside and outside the bottle. Is that correct? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so we've been doing that inside the bottle for a long time. The fisheries that we use low impact, they're low impact fisheries, and they use ethical practices and sustainability. We also fish from deep waters, and we use the types of fish that have easily replenished in their life cycle because of the types of fish that they are. And also we use every part of the fish. So some people ask, like with, for instance, our cod liver oil, you're only using the liver? What are you doing with the rest of it? No, every single bit of it is being used either for human or animal product consumption. So again, we've been doing that for quite a while. And also the Norwegian government, they really strictly monitor the waterways. So that's been going on for a long time. Now, we use suppliers that hold the Friend of the Sea certification. So that's a nonprofit certification, and they are constantly looking at the marine habitat conservation. And it's basically they're very strict guidelines and procedures
Mhm.
that they have to follow. So we've been doing that for a long time, and you can see that emblem on our packaging as well. So that's just like some of the inside stuff that we do. We also do third-party testings and IFOS. We talked about that last time. But again, we're always about, the company was started with helping us from our health. And so we want to be great stewards to the earth as well.
Mhm.
So talking about this, I was looking at one quote that they were saying that by 2050, that there will be more plastics in the ocean than fish by weight, which is scary and to me very disgusting.
Wow.
So, yeah, and all of our plastic bottles are recyclable to begin with, but then we started thinking we want to take this a little step further. And in June of 2021, we joined Greenprint's Impact Collective. And they are a group of forward-thinking companies that are making a positive impact on the environment. And so we wanted to join in with them. And basically, we have a goal by 2024, and we're really going very quickly towards that goal, which I'm very pleased with,
Hmm.
because right as of now, we have cleaned 250,000 pounds of plastics from the oceans.
Wow.
So yeah, and they use this stuff for upcycling, recycling. So they would, if they get nets out of the sea, they would make clothing with it, or socks, or some other different types of things. Um, so we were using just our kids line and our Canadian line, but now we've extended it to our entire line with the plastic
Hmm.
bottles, that in addition to being recyclable, now it would make the purchase a net zero, um, basically zero plastic footprint, because what the purchase is now being collected equally from the oceans.
Hmm.
So it's a net zero. So we're
Wow.
very proud about that. We're trying to get towards that, and now including our entire line by 2024. And so that's just one of the initiatives. And in addition to working with Impact Collective, there's some great benefits in addition. Like, they work with the Arbor Day Foundation. And so this year they gave us some figures that they planted over 5,000 trees in Northern California and 5,000 in Northeastern California due to the fires.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's a wonderful thing. And there's also something called the Eden Reforestation Project in Africa, where they planted over 500 mangrove trees. And they apparently, what they do is they help keep the ground, and it doesn't allow the washing away of around the sea areas. So it's really important for that for them.
Right.
Um, so those are some cool things that we've done along with Impact Collective. Also, another thing I found out was, working with Impact Collective, they all of what they do is covered under what's called the United Nations Sustainable Initiative goals, and those
Hmm.
were adopted in 2015. And so it's basically, they have certain goals by 2030 for peace and economic recovery, poverty, things like that. And we hit goals number 6, which is clean waters, number 8, which is impact development and decent work, and number 14, which is life below water. So I thought that was pretty
Wow. That's
interesting too,
incredible.
right? Yeah. So those are some good things. And one of the other things that we're doing too is with our vitamin D boxes. If you've ever noticed on
Hmm.
there, it says SFI, which is the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. So they're again nonprofit, and basically they make sure that the products that come from the forest are sustainably harvested. And we're trying to extend that to any of the other boxes too that we have for some of our higher potency fish oils
Yeah.
that we have. So yeah, so I'm very proud of the initiatives that we're doing, and we're hoping to go beyond that and possibly change some of our packaging even further with the plastic bottles. So
Incredible. And a lot of glass products are available with
yes,
Carlson, which is the cool thing.
right,
And a lot of people that they don't realize Carlson Laboratories has been around. Well, they're one of the first, maybe the first omega-3 product on the shelves for supplement
right.
options. Is that correct? We go back to the 80s, even beyond,
It,
maybe even late 70s. You mentioned it in episode 15, but give us a
right,
refresher.
right. Yeah, the company was started in 1965, but it was more so in the 80s that we got involved in dealing with fish oils. And John Carlson, who has since passed away, was Susan's husband, and he was reading some papers of I think it was an English researcher, and looking at DHA and the omega-3s and the importance. And so he wanted to bring that over to the States and start educating. So it was cod liver oil and our salmon oil that were one of the first ones to bring it to the States and start educating on them. So yes, you'll see that we have a long history with fish oil. A lot of people associate Carlson with fish oil, And we're the #1 selling cod liver oil in North America and people recognize those glass bottles too. So that's
Incredible.
shipped straight over from Norway.
So at this point, a lot of people that are in the health field, they've heard of EPA, DHA as essential fatty acids, omega-3s. Tell us about DPA, which is kind of making a move now on towards the mainstream, maybe, or maybe we're still in a bubble on the DPA, but help us
Yeah.
differentiate. What's the DPA?
So again, that's something that I've started hearing about probably a couple of years ago. And it was brought to us because clients were asking us, hey, what is this DPA? Do you have this in your product? And we were like, what are you talking about? And
Hmm.
so we started digging a little bit further. It's not really like the new kid on the block because it's been there. It's just that there was not a plethora of research like there is on the EPA and DHA. So DPA is considered this intermediary. It basically, when you look at the flow from alpha linoleic acid into EPA, it flows into DPA and then DHA. And it's really unique because DPA can flow back into making EPA or into DHA. So it's kind of like this sort of intermediary reservoir. So whatever the body will need, it will help it to shunt to either more EPA or DHA. And it's more similar as when you look at the carbon content of it, where EPA is 20 carbon chains long, where DPA and DHA are 22 carbon chains. So
Hmm.
they apparently get into the membranes more easily, quickly than EPA. Still all beneficial, and they're all the different structures are a little bit different, and they're all unique into themselves. And that gets a little bit deeper when you start looking into like the research and also the SPMs. And I don't know if you've talked at all about SPMs or Resolvins, Protectins, Mericians, any of those. But that's where this starts getting really deeper and interesting, looking at the inflammation.
Right. So, okay, we'll do a quick summary then. So, DPA is right in between the EPA and the DHA. It fits in between there in that pathway. And then
Right.
it helps to make more of the
Yep.
DHA. It's necessary. It's a key
Right.
mediator. And then, so that's a perfect segue then into the protectins and resolvins, like you just mentioned. And I think you said the SMPs. Let's dive into that section then.
Yeah. So the PRMs or SPMs, they're specialized pro-resolving mediators. So basically, EPA, DHA, and DPA all basically flow into or converted into making those protectins, resolvins, and there's specific ones like EPA is into, I think it's 5 protectin, no, E series resolvins, and the DPA is the D series resolvins along with the DHA and the protectins and mericins. And basically, how to make this more simple to understand is that there's inflammation in the body, right? And the body needs to get back to homeostasis. And if it's kicked into overdrive and not turned off, that's not a good thing. We do
Right.
need inflammation for a short time, but we need to turn it back off. And what these do is they go into the cells and they start telling the neutrophils basically get back down to what we need. Get the macrophages, the cleanup crew to go in and clean up that debris and any of the neutrophils and any of the other diseased tissues out, get the cells back into homeostasis. So it's, and I saw this great little video and it was talking about this, simply understanding like if you had some sort of leak in your house and you had to call a contractor in to fix it. So they'd have to break the wall down to get in there and fix that leak and then build the wall back up and then everything should be working nicely.
Right.
Basically, that's how these work is they go in and they protect and resolve. That's the names, protectins and
Yeah.
resolvins. They go in and resolve the issues and then work to protect the cells. So it's pretty interesting stuff. And again, this is not just unique to DPA, it's also EPA and DHA. So they all have that ability. It's just DPA is something that's now being looked at more. Again, like I said, there wasn't tons and tons of research, but they are seeing now some research with brain health, and that's because the second largest fatty acid found in the brain from DHA is DPA. And also for breast milk, the second one found in there that's first primarily DHA, then DPA for the baby. So it's found with, again, neuroprotective, cardiovascular, they're looking at breast health, and just like mental well-being as well. So there's a lot of different research out there now. So that's one of the reasons why we started looking into it a bit more and making sure that it's on the label. And people may look at it and say, hey, there's not really that much in there. Typically, it's much lower amounts than the EPA and DHA
Okay,
because, again, it's that intermediary. It may be increasing more of the EPA, so that's why it would have more EPA than DHA. Or
I see.
so it just smaller amounts typically found in there. It's normal to find anywhere from 50 to 300 milligrams in a
Hmm,
product, not super, super high amounts. So we're
fascinating.
making sure it's on the labels. Yeah.
Thanks for breaking that down, Laurel. So we just discussed protectins, like protect with INS at the end, and then there's even resolvins, like RESOLVINS, resolvins. And so these are needed in the body to protect against inflammation, and they are derived from omega fatty acids like EPA, DHA. Is this correct?
Yes. Yes,
So,
exactly.
so by taking a product, for example, like Carlson's cod liver oil in the glass bottle, the classic,
Mhm.
the body will then, once you consume that, it starts producing the protectins and resolvins from that. Is that how it works?
So ideally, yes.
Okay.
There are certain things like anything in the body that will slow that conversion, like certain foods that we might be consuming,
Uh-huh.
aging process, illness, things like that. So there are some that have they're basically preformed SPMs in there to make sure that it's already converted because in a lot of things like vitamin D, right? We've talked about how there's rate limiting steps and enzymes in between for conversions.
Right.
And so there are preformed SPMs in there. But ideally, if the body is working as a whole as it should, then you would convert that from those. Yes.
Okay. So clarify the new labeling of DPA. What is this referring to? Were they not on the label before and now they're added on so people know it's on there? Is that how it works?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So when people ask us, hey, were those just added in? No, they
They've
were
been
in
there. Yeah.
small. Yeah, they've been there. They might have been in smaller amounts. They might have been something that we didn't have the ability to standardize, but now we are making sure it's standardized before we could put it on a label claim. So again, they're in there and our labels are continuously on the fish oils being changed over to having the DPA listed on there. In addition, we have one product that is our Super DPA. So that is a specific one that we have that's the highest amount of DPA that we have. It's 300 DPA with DHA and EPA in there too. So, but
Okay, so how does
yeah,
one know? We got a lot of questions on the fish oils. A lot of people go to the omega fatty acid section here at Healthy Habit Health Foods. How does
right.
one know to go for the super DPA then, that they need more of the DPA versus just the standard? How would you look at that?
Right, right. And again, we're getting a lot of those questions like, why would I go
Yeah.
towards that over something that I've been using? Well, this Super DPA predominantly has DHA in there. So again, something where you would want higher DHA, whether it was for brain health or for vision health or um, again, mainly along those lines, mental well-being. And the DPA, higher amounts of that would be more so for, again, the conditions that are linked with inflammation. So anybody having some really great inflammatory issue, or again, going back to the research, they're looking at for neuroprotective, for the breast health and for cardiovascular, also for triglycerides in within normal levels too. So those would be mainly the people that would go more towards a super DPA product or
Right, that they're extremely diabetic. It's out of control, maybe or extreme obesity or really high
Mhm.
blood pressure, different
Right,
if it's progressed
right,
potentially. And always work
right.
with your doc. You guys can come up with
Yes,
the right dose for you. This is just general educational as a starting point, right? And help with some
exactly.
navigation.
Yes.
So, what's a good starting point then for general population? We're in an omega-6 excess as a nation, as a society. We get way too many omega-6s compared to omega-3s. I think that's a really good case for why someone should start an omega-3 supplement potentially, just to get that ratio fixed at least. What are your thoughts?
Yes, 100%. Again, we've talked before about how the ratios are so off. It should
Yeah,
be ideally 1 to 1, 2 to 1 of omega-3s to sixes, but it can be upwards to 20 to 1.
yeah.
So I'd say at the minimum and the recommendations that are out there for the American Heart and American Medical Association, 1,000 milligrams of a combination of EPA, DHA, DPA, all in there. Upwards to now, research is looking at 1,500 to 2 grams a day. So I would think that people would go higher, upwards, more towards that mark. The 1,500 to 2,000 a day would be a great goal.
Amazing. Do most people like starting with the liquid, or I know you have the soft gel options as well?
Right. I would say it's interesting. I'm not sure. Well, again, cod liver oil is the #1 selling, so that says something about people liking the liquids.
Yeah.
But yeah, soft gels, we have all different sizes too. We have minis, we have regular, because people, again, I've dealt with through my being a dietitian and counseling people with issues with swallowing, they can't swallow even bigger soft gels. So the liquids would be great for them. Some people don't care for the fact that you're swallowing an oil, which to me I get from way back when I tried it, but now this I prefer that. So I just take a teaspoon of that and then I'm done with it. Or you can stir it into something like yogurts
Yeah.
or into your smoothies, because we have all sorts of great flavors and no fishy taste. So all different flavors. So it's why we have all the different delivery options there. And most people, when I'm going to shows, don't want the liquids because they hear fish oil and they think, I'm not going to take that. And then I have them try it, smell it, and then try it, and then they love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
So,
interesting.
as I mentioned in the introduction there, you've been working in the natural products industry since 2000, Laurel. We're 23 years here. What's your take home here, or a good reason for educating even on omega-3s and working with Carlson Labs that someone should consider taking an omega product? What would be your top reasons? Elevator pitch.
Yeah, well,
23 years.
I mean, yeah, well, omegas honestly hit everything in the body. They're absorbed into the red blood cell membrane, and so it helps with eyes, it helps with joints, it helps with skin, just everywhere throughout the body. Omega-3s are necessary. So that's why it's important. And a lot of the research now is showing that most of the Americans are not eating the omega-3 fish that they need. And it's for cardiovascular health and brain health. And like I said, so, and those lower levels are significantly uh, impacting their overall health. And
Hmm.
they're seeing that now in research. So, at the minimum, taking 1 gram upwards, hopefully to 2 grams a day, because it helps protect everything in the body. Basically, when you look at the research, there's 40,000 different studies on omega-3s. So, it's one of the most researched nutrients out there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And what would be your favorite food sources?
Oh my, I'm a big
Salmon.
salmon. Yeah, that's my #1. I eat salmon all the time. Yep.
Any other fish that have good amounts?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you have tuna, you have anchovies, but you have to be careful with tuna again with the mercuries and sardines, mackerel. So there's a lot of different fish out there, but I think unfortunately, the United States as a whole, they just don't eat very many fish. So that's why we really need to make sure that our levels are higher. And there are test kits where you can test your omega-3
Right.
levels as well. So that's something that people should look at.
And there are graphs you can find online. If you just go to Google Images and type in omega-3 fish and then low mercury, it gives you a
Right.
chart literally prepared from the
Yes.
American Heart Association, which gives you high omega fish that are also low in mercury. You want to have both, right, Laurel?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe you
Yes.
can touch on real quick the importance of having a low mercury diet and what are some issues, and we'll finish on that note. Why is that so important, keeping mercury
Yeah.
low?
Well, again, that's incorporated into the brain, the body, everywhere. We need to make sure that our detox pathways are exiting that out. So we definitely don't want to have higher amounts. In the lower, it's basically the fish, the lower fish, and then as it progresses up the food chain, being eaten by bigger fish. So um, the mercury builds up in their
Mm,
meat, flesh, basically, then we eat that. So that's why we want to look at the lower, basically the bottom feeders, because they have higher amounts of mercury. And we, again, pregnancy, you don't want to have that. You want to avoid that. So not ideal overall to have higher
mm-hmm.
amounts of any of those like mercury levels.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, the salmon, sardines, anchovies, those are all good starting
Mackerel.
points. Mackerel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Amazing, Laurel. This brings us to the end of our interview here, episode number 30. What's a good take home for our listeners? People are listening to this right now as they're shopping in Healthy Habit Health Foods. Give us a little take home message. What should they walk away with from this episode?
Well, take care of Mother Earth. Make sure you take your omega-3s, plenty of them. If you don't like to have fish, take in at least 1 to 2 grams a day because it helps everything in the entire body. Those are my two big takeaways.
Laura, I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you for the time, and thank you to the whole
Thank
team there
you.
at Carlson Labs. You guys have been great.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.